When last we left our adventurers, they had just saved the temple from the kobolds and cultists that were trying to break down the doors. A little girl, walked up with a bundle of fabric and wood, handing it to Arkin the cleric, saying, "Take this, and thank you," and handed her a set of bagpipes. It's kind of the way it went down, but close enough for rock and roll. That's right, my adventurers just finished up the Sanctuary mission as part of Greennest in Flames, Hoard of the Dragon Queen. So, giant spoiler alert at this point. If you haven't played Hoard of the Dragon Queen and want to be surprised when you go through it, stop watching now, go watch something else, and be surprised by it. But if you do, either have played through it, or you don't care if we ruin the story for you, keep on watching and watch how my adventurers face the challenges that are Hoard of the Dragon Queen. If you'd like to see the DM notes on this, please go watch how Haven did it, and I'll discuss more behind-the-scenes stuff, as well as some of how I tweaked some of the issues and some of the things seen, as well as the fact that as of the filming of these videos, they had just re-released the brand new updated versions of the Tyranny of Dragons. So, on with the story. So our adventurers had just saved the temple. They took a short rest, filling in Moonfalcon, the priest, and the other townsfolk that were gathered there on what had gone on, and the current state of their town, as well as the keep. Now, unfortunately, the adventurers being relatively new, they only knew the names of the head honchos, as well as a few minor people that they'd run into, the one family specifically of Lorena Swift and her husband and children. So when asked about specific people, they didn't know. However, they were able to fill them in that a lot of people had made it to the keep and kind of put those townsfolk at ease and fill in Moonfalcon, the priest, as on the general consensus of the city. He was more worried about everybody and what he'd been able to see a little bit when they had actually scouted from the bell tower of their temple. So they take a short rest. They also then proceed to rebarricade the temple, fix the doors as best they could, fix the gates to the walls outside of their temple to make sure that if there was another attack, it'd be a lot harder. And they've decided at this point that that this is what they were due. They had talked about taking them back with them, taking the townsfolk and the priest back to the keep with them. They thought it best if they stay here because it's hard to move that many people stealthily, even going through a stream bed that's sunken in. So they rebarricaded themselves in there. They would report back once the all clear was done to come gather them, and they would report back that the people were safe. Upon barricading everything, getting their few points back by resting, the adventurers leave, follow the stream back to the secret tunnel entrance to get back into the keep. They find the tunnel again clear. The bodies that had been there before have been removed, and they make their way, after locking the door behind them, back into the keep. It's a relatively uneventful trip. At this point, it's actually becoming eerily quiet on this southern side of the town. Entering the keep, though, and as they get closer to the keep and going up the stairs to actually come out of the tunnel and into the keep proper, they hear shouting. But it's the sounds of, like, help me, and you go over there, and this and that. They manage to come into the keep keep proper, and they find they had just missed an engagement. And that a lot of kobolds and cultists had actually found a way into the keep while coming through a sally door that had broken. And they had been rejected. They killed them or forced them back out, and they had rebarricaded the door with some makeshift pallets and wood and barrels, and had blocked them off. And at this point, when the adventurers show up, they're kind of in cleanup mode. They're moving the bodies aside, checking on who needs to be healed and who's injured. At this time, they find Melanie and Walnut, the giant dire raccoon, as well as Lady Grey, the police fighter that they had earlier, as well as Escobart, the dwarven head of the guards of the keep. They check in. There's some rejoicing. The townsfolk is very happy to hear about the temple and that everybody who's there was saved. But again, they didn't know who people were, and they forgot to write down names of the people who were there. So they get back to and weren't able to tell them, but they said, yes, they're safe. We'll send word once we're all safe, and you can all rejoin. Now, they're instructed that the governor would love to be updated. He's back still up at the parapet overseeing things. And they make their way up there, fill him in on both their adventures at the mill, and filled him in more than what Lady Grey had filled him in and what Melanie had filled him in. Fill him in on the adventures at the mill. Fill them in on the adventure of taking care of the temple and the fact that Moonfalcon is okay and his townsfolk are healed and safe, and they managed to weather the assault on the temple rather well. is during the conversation and the reporting into each other at the top of the parapet that they are interrupted by a voice.
Defenders of Greennest! This has been a successful night, and I'm feeling generous. Do you see these 4 pitiful, useless prisoners? We have no need for them, so I will trade them back to you. Send out your best warrior to fight me, and you can have these 4 in exchange.
So from the top of the tower, they look down and they see a very large, scaled figure in plate mail armor with 2 large battle axes and 8 kobolds on each side flanking out, chittering. To one side, there's a family, specifically a woman, a teenage boy, and 2 children being prodded with spears by the kobolds. Now that is Sinrath. He's demanding a challenge outside of the gates. The party talks amongst themselves, and Governor Nighthill pleads with them, asks one more favor if they would be their champion. It is agreed that the Hare actually has the best shot of fighting Sinrath. So the half-orc barbarian gathers her weapons, drops her packs, and lightens her load, and steps out the front gates to the cheers, the congratulations, and the thank yous of the townspeople. The party flank out on either side, so we now have a fighting pit about 50 feet. One side flanked by the kobolds, the other side flanked by our adventurers, as well as Governor Nighthill and Lady Grey and Escabart. They step forward. Sinrath asks,
Are you ready?
to which Naris responds, step forward, half-breed, and face your death. And with this, Sinrath lifts her head back, leans forward, and breathes a gout of lightning across, hitting only Naris. Naris dodges out of the way, minimizing the amount of damage in her raging form, as well as succeeding in a very good dodge. Now Sinrath charges forward, slashing with both axes. One axe makes contact, giving more damage to the already downed Naris. Naris, stepping to her feet, slashes up with her great axe, carving across the metal as well as the midsection of Sinrath. They exchange blows back and forth, some dodging, some ducking, some making contact. The multiple axe blows of the battle axes of Sinrath happen to land just more blows in general than Naris is. But when Naris is able to make a hit, she hits and hits hard. This goes back and forth and back and forth. They're tumbling around the fighting pit. The kobolds cheering on their champion. Our adventurers cheering on theirs. And then, as the combat wanes and both are showing some exhaustion, Sinrath feels the power deep within her come back. She reaches back and breathes lightning at close range again on Naris. Naris dodges it once more, dodging the majority of the damage. She's taken so much. And with one last axe swing from Sinrath, Naris falls. Sinrath turns to her kobolds, raising her axes in the air, cheering her victory. But our half-orc reaches deep down into her ancestry of orcish blood and pulls herself back up onto her feet, pulls her great axe up, and swings once more at the backside of Sinrath's cheering form. She manages to cleave across the back, onto the clavicle, and down to the side, knocking her steps forward. Sinrath, surprised by this attack, but elated the combat gets to continue, wails another round of numerous blows upon Naris. Naris, unfortunately, is unable to sustain the combat and falls once more. Now Sinrath, enjoying this combat and pleased with the quality of combatant that Greennest was able to produce, she looks down at the fallen form of the half-orc, proceeds to drop one of her battle axes beside her before releasing the woman, gathering her kobolds, and leaving. The townsfolk rush forward to Naris's aid. She is given a couple of healing potions. She's healed back up She's brought back to consciousness. A little beaten, but no worse for wear. The grateful townsfolk lay gifts upon them, thanking them so much. They now look out across from the keep at Greennest and notice that the raiders have all gone. The wagons are gone. And there is not a sight. And the town falls eerily silent except for the crackling flames of the burning buildings. Rescue parties are sent out from the keep. The adventurers are offered some lodging inside of the keep since they have done so much for the town. They greatly accept it. Upon waking in the morning, well rested, and by morning I mean like noon, they get up, they are called down for breakfast, where breakfast is being kind of served in shifts throughout the keep, but one of the head tables, where Governor Nighthill and Escobar the Dwarf and Lady Gray the Fighter are all sitting there waiting for the party, as well as a new halfling, which they had noticed the night before and had kind of heard a little bit. It was actually conversating with Escobar and Nighthill when they came up for their report. This halfling is introduced as Calibu, a halfling that had taken refuge in Greennest during the start of the raid. And during the raid had come to Nighthill and offered what little she could offer in moral support. The party fills in on what has happened while they were sleeping, that more people had been found hiding in their basements and hiding throughout the town. So actually, it looks like not many people are actually killed. A lot were injured, but for the most part, death was kept to a minimum. It really was that they were there to steal and to take whatever valuables they could find. Killing wasn't the top priority. At this breakfast, Nighthill turns to the party and asks that he's conferred with the town, and they'd like to offer a reward if this party of adventurers would be willing to track the raiders and recover what they can. But that's not the main mission. He really wants to know what the course of the raiders is going to be. He's going to be sending, or has sent, emissaries to the other following towns to find out the condition of them, and then to possibly warn them later if the raiders seem to be sticking around to continue raiding, if they're in a particular direction, or what seems to be their next course of action. He just wants intel on what happened. Again, if the valuables can be recovered, that'd be great, but his main thing is he wants information. It is also told to the party at this point that Melanie and Walnut have decided that they are going to stay in Greennest. That was their goal. They were told to go to Greennest, and they got here, and they're going to stick around and help rebuild. But Calibu will be following them. So the halfling bard fills them in on who she is and what she does know from her travels from the various towns, and that this is not the only town locally that has been ravaged and ransacked and raided in the past months. In fact, her travels had taken her through a couple of them that had already been raided and were in possibly worse shape than even Greennest had suffered. They were also reminded that Grom Merchant, the dwarf merchant that had taken them here to begin this entire adventure, would love to see them. He's got something for them, for their willingness to help his town. They say their goodbyes. They then proceed to get ready. And they gladly accept. They will go and follow the raiders and get some information. So they go to Grom. They meet up with Grom. They do some shopping. Now, unfortunately, Grom really only has what he had brought with him. The shop itself had been ransacked pretty heavily, and most things of value had been taken. So while they are gathering their belongings and talking with Grom and From Merchant and their son, Brom, Lutau is approached by an individual with a limp and calls him out by name. Are you? Well, I think his voice was like that. It's more, are you Lutau? To which Lutau agrees, yes, I am. Introduced himself as a brother monk who had been traveling with Lutau's former master, Leoshan. Informs him Leoshan was actually in the town during the raid, had fought valiantly with his other brother monks, until they had either fallen or taken refuge when the numbers of the raiders had gotten great. Upon coming to in this morning, Nisim realized that he couldn't find the ocean. All he found was a broken choker and a broken quarterstaff. He hands the choker over to Lu Tao, since he is going after the raiders, if he could see if he can find him. He hopes that the ocean has only followed the raiders to get more information, since he seemed to know a lot. They had actually been studying up on the proceedings and some of the things going on at one of the local libraries on their way back to report in. They happened to come to this town when the raid happened, almost as if the ocean knew it was going to happen. So they hope that he's just following him. However, the monk's hot-headed, and he's afraid that he might have gotten in over his head. So please keep an eye out for him in the raiders and report back any news, since he's not amongst the dead and I haven't found him. They part ways. At this point, it's about noon is when they decide to leave, and the merchants call the party together after giving them what little they had, which did give him a bunch of healing potions that he had brought in, some ropes, some adventuring gear. This is the general store for a town. It really is not an adventuring store. So unfortunately, weapons and enchantments and magical items are just not really there. So they do get more herbs. However, they call the party together, and they've actually scraped together a few things they'd like to give them. And it starts off that the merchant couple remove their wedding rings and hand them to Lu Tao and to Naharis and say, "We got these together to keep us protected, and you protected us. And I feel it fit that they now go to you to protect you," and hand them 2 rings of protection. A scroll of Vivify is handed off to Arkin so that she can better serve her party. More herbs and an alchemist kit is handed off to Remy to help her with her brewing and some of her herbalism that she seems to be so adept with for a rogue. Some paper and some ink is handed off to Callie for a purpose unknown at this point. And lastly, something is given to Rosalind, but we're not quite sure what yet. It was kind of handed off in person. Or private, I should say. In private, not in person. Of course it was in person, but no, in private it was handed off. The party then gathers the horses that they were given and ride off. An hour or so later, they come across a band of kobolds and some cultists. They seem rather injured, seem to be straggling behind. This is after following the trail, and the trail was very easy to follow until they got to this plateaued area where jutting, jarring chunks of rock and mountain come out of the ground, flat on the top, but they're following the trail that is in the ravine between these plateaus, and at an opening between multiple spots, where 3 of these ravines come together, they find a small gathering cooking lunch. Calibou impresses the new party with her charismatic responses and manages to actually distract the cultists that are there, there's 4 of them, and get them engaged in a conversation, take them off their guard, while the rest of the party sneaks up on them. Upon springing their attack, the cultists are immediately wiped out, and Calibou manages to cast sleep on a bunch of the kobolds, as well as the giant lizard that had been snoozing with them. The rest of the kobolds are dispatched quickly. Now, at this point, they're left with a couple of sleeping kobolds. And they decide they're going to keep one of them, so they slew the other one, and they bring the other one out of sleep. And through some magnificent rolls on our new bard's part, convince the kobold that the rest of the kobolds had died from tainted meat fed to them by the cultists, and that the adventurers had come forth to attack the cultists on their behalf, and that they had really saved the kobolds from these treacherous humies. It's really spectacular rules, by the way. So now they have a kind of trusting kobold companion, and it's with that kobold companion that we ended our session. Now, at this point, we've actually bridged the gap. Once they left Greennest, once they gone to sleep after fighting through the Greennest in flames, that was the end of chapter 1, and they actually got into the part of chapter 2 of setting out on this little adventure. Our night had just gone pretty quickly. It went pretty well, and we managed to get through a lot. I felt really good about the session. It was really a lot of fun. Everybody seems to be having some fun. Even the duel seemed to engage a lot of people. If you want to know how I ran that duel and how I ran everything, please, by all means, go check out how Haven did it. That's my DM side of things, where I show the tips and everything like that. I will be doing, we'll be getting off to the next round and seeing where else they go as they go try to track down these raiders. If you have any questions, by all means, throw them in the comments below. Shoot me an email. My email address is down in the doobly-doo, as well as all kinds of other information that I've left behind. If you'd like to support me, I'm going to point out, by all means, go down and buy the game I created. I created a card game for the Swords of Valour. If you pick that up, it helps support me, as well as the Swords of Valour, my other improv sword fighting troupe. Again, I'm Haven the Hare. Thank you for watching, and may you make all of life saving.